everything else in order. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got you. I'm gonna be spending the day doing that myself, just like getting set up for the upcoming
Oh, I
week.
just had to, yeah, I just had to get it in order. You know what I mean?
You should be seeing the live soon if you're not seeing it now.
Okay, yeah. There it is. Okay. Hey, hon, could I get another cup of coffee? Can I get another cup of coffee? Today's so nice. They went to it. All right. I think we did really good.
Oh, glad to hear it. How many groups did you hit?
Oh, at least 150, maybe
Oh,
more. No, I hit at least 150, maybe more. I could be close to 200 because I blended it a little bit between the other, what do you call the profiles. So I'd have to look afterwards because I just went, kind of nutty. All right. Uh, those few extra minutes just make a difference. You know that?
yeah, I'm getting that sense.
How you feeling from that walk yesterday?
Uh, good. I was definitely a bit sore when I got back, but I'm glad I went through all those neighborhoods just to see them.
You must have walked 5 miles at least.
Yes, sounds about right. Yeah. I
How many steps?
think at the end of the day I had like 15,000.
Wow, that's great.
Like I got it's not often that I have this like sense of feeling lost. I mean, I had a sense of where I was, but just not quite sure of like where.
Well, you had to follow the train tracks. That's all you had to do. But I know when I get an hour treadmill and then whatever I get in after that is just gravy. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's how I look at it. Like yesterday, I probably did 7,000, 8,000, yeah, about 6,000 steps, but I did an hour treadmill in the morning. So that's that's like 4 or 5 miles. You know what I mean?
Mm.
All right. I think that.
Mm.
I mean, we're getting thousands of views through Facebook and YouTube. That's big. That translates back to more downloads, I think,
Agreed. Definitely.
to the website. We've got 2 minutes.
All right, you're a minute out. I'm gonna mute myself.
Yep. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. This is Joe Scarice, your co-founder and co-host of the Creative Birth Strategy podcast and house here on Clubhouse. Always excited to provide education, networking, and opportunities. So we're going to get here started here in just a few minutes. I want to thank always our sponsors first, because without them, we wouldn't be here providing you this great strategy discussion every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I would like to thank Mr. Yardell Perkins of Perkatech, our social media strategist and our architect to our podcast and video and graphic artwork. Without him, we wouldn't even be here to get this started. But I want to thank him, reach out to him with any questions in regards to social media discussions and strategy. I'd like to thank Mr. Eric Moss of MB Capital Solutions, where I'm a referral partner, providing unsecured business lines of credit for real estate professionals and B2B individuals for real estate holdings. Been working with them on a unsecured business line of credit program for quite a while now. So really appreciate their relationship and our relationship here at the clubhouse room, and obviously the podcast. I would like to thank Lenmark Capital, where I'm a senior loan analyst, providing asset-based lending nationwide for real estate investors throughout the country, providing DSCR, fixed to rent, fixed to flip, new construction, multifamily, mixed use, advisory strategy. I'd like to thank Realty 411, Miss Linda Pelagas, who provides a national publication and a national events for real estate professionals throughout the country. And then last but not least, two more. I'd like to thank Elite Dealmakers, where I'm aligned with them in providing educational networking events in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. And then where my real estate licenses are held with TCS Property Management. They have property management services throughout the country, providing property management and maintenance for real estate investors and landlords in various markets. But a really great week this past week. I've been traveling quite a bit. I just got back from Rhode Island, where I presented a CE course on asset-based lending, not just for agents, but for real estate investors. A full room, probably about 45 people on a Saturday, beautiful day. We also held our first mastermind in Connecticut at our corporate offices in Westport, Connecticut, at Lenmark's offices. Had about 30 people there, which was extremely impressive for our first event. I'm really excited about the relationship I have with Dave DeVito and how Landmark is allowing me to host an event at their offices in Westport, Connecticut. And if you've ever been to Westport, Connecticut, it's just a beautiful area. And Rhode Island, it's just beautiful to drive through. Was at a couple other events this past week. I was at the HABCO general meeting and also Jumpstart Germantown the same evening in Philadelphia. HABCO is the landlord association for Philly. Obviously, they've been embattled with a lot of various moving parts with landlords and tenants in Philadelphia, but they had a really nice event at St. Joe's University. Got to see some people I hadn't seen in quite a while. And then I got to go to the Jumpstart Germantown. I met a really great young architect talking about different types of designs and architectural space with co-living space, discussing some various options there. Then I was at the Integrity Home Buyers Networking event in York, Pennsylvania. That was a lot of fun. We had met about 60 to 70 real estate investors, probably more close to 75. Very exciting room, younger room, a lot of high energy, a lot of just good conversation, very spiritual room as well. So I'm excited about that. It was just a really good week of meeting and greeting a lot of people and follow-ups and follow through. This week we're at South Jersey in Haddon Township tomorrow night with the Elite Dealmakers event. Tuesday, well, I'm most likely going to be either in Reading or Rye, New York. Wednesday, I'll be in Lancaster. Thursday, I think I will be probably South Jersey. And on Saturday, we have another great event in Philadelphia, working with the Sub 2 community and owners, the owners team of Sub 2 community at my offices. So a very full week, a little more local, a little less travel. But let's get caught up on the market real quick here, and then we'll dive into our discussion, the state of the economy, and how it's impacting on real estate investing. So, I think people are very focused on rates, and let's be honest, rates haven't moved much. The media could tell you whatever you want to hear, but we closed at 6.90 on the 30-year, on the 10-year Treasury, which was a little elevated, but nothing too crazy. Probably the unemployment numbers probably impacted a little bit. But I think those employment numbers they could settle down a little bit. They were a little high, but not too high. I'm seeing actually decent job reports in the private sector. The 5-year Treasury stayed still. We were still locking loans between 6.875 and 7%. And guess what, guys? The national average of the rate for the last 40 years, guess what it was? 7%. We're right near where we need to be. Problem you still have some inflated values. You are seeing more days on the market on properties. You're starting to see people taking properties off the market that were flipping and then potentially refinancing and holding now. So you're seeing some of that. You're seeing some price drops a little bit here and there. Certain markets are staying very hot because inventory is just not there. I mean, technically it sucks for a lot of real estate agents with a very stagnant real estate inventory. The people that have these low rates, they're not moving. So they're not going anywhere. So that inventory is not going to come suddenly off the market unless there's something traumatizing that happens in the family. So I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that catches my eye. Some single family serious delinquency rates decreased in March. So multifamily delinquency, that's kind of an interesting landscape right now because it's moving up. It's pointing up. That eat, work, and live environment is starting to take a little beating. Okay, so that's interesting to see that article. It caught my eye. See what else caught my eye this week on some articles that I posted. Some top rental markets. I agree with a lot of this. I agree with Richmond, Virginia, and Raleigh, North Carolina. I'll be in Raleigh this quarter coming up. I was in Richmond this past quarter. Great, strong market. I think Pennsylvania and Virginia really have some top metros. We're looking at Allentown, Pennsylvania, very strong. Back down to Virginia, we got Virginia Beach. Then out in the Midwest, we got the Omaha and St. Louis metro areas, and certain areas of California are still holding tough in that single-family hot rental market. Pittsburgh is strong. I like Pittsburgh a lot. I was out there. I'm going to be going back out there in June again. So I feel like that's a very consistent, strong market. And Another article caught my eye. Multifamily permits fall below pre-pandemic levels. I think people are starting to get a little nervous with all these developments where they were thinking maybe condo development, then they were going multifamily development, and their costs change, permits change, abatements change. So you're seeing kind of a slowdown there. I think that allowed the single family landlording to kind of not get completely compressed on DSCR. So that is hopefully a balancing act right there. I was seeing a lot of malls bringing multifamily space to their malls. That might have a slight slowdown. That might go more the 55 plus environment. I'm starting to see more 55 plus multifamily development coming along in various spots in various markets as well. See here one other article that caught my eye. Some migration trends that we're seeing. We're seeing interstate moves surge during the pandemic, but now settling down. We're seeing homeowners with low rates are staying put. Migration to low density areas have persisted, so that rural to suburban market is still staying very frothy in a good way. And then the Sun Belt still leads amongst all the migration markets as well. Let's see here, anything else catches my eye? We dive into our subject. I'm seeing construction activity driving home prices down a little bit because some of the new construction is now build to rent. So that'll be interesting depending on what market you're in and how that impacts. So let's dive in to our subject at hand, and then we'll open it up, obviously, to our moderators. And, the state of the market as of May 2025, the real estate market is navigating a complex landscape shaped by economic factors and demographic trends, and evolving buyer preferences. We need to stay ahead of what's going on in the latest developments. Mortgage rates, like the 30-year, is hovering between 6.67 and 7.04. Home prices, depending on where you're at, they're increasing, decreasing, but there's a lot of attributing factors based on limited inventory and sustained demand. Inventory constraints, homeowners are reluctant to sell due to previously secured low mortgage rates, leading to a lock-in effect. So this behavior continues to limit the number of homes available for sale. I'm seeing the off-market industry right now with the investors at an all-time high. I mean, when you go to a networking event, everything's discussed off-market. Some of the market trends, buyer behavior, despite affordability challenges, some buyers are adjusting to the current market conditions and moving forward with purchases. And there's some regional dynamics. The Sun Belt is staying very hot in regards to job opportunities and migration patterns. Then there's obviously climate conditions that are, a lot of areas are at risk with severe weather events and influence buyer decisions and insurance costs, which is very interesting right now with insurance. The commercial real estate outlook. The Fed, actions to reduce interest rates are expected to lower borrowing costs, potentially encouraging investment in commercial real estate. I'm still a little hesitant on office retail, mixed use. I'm concerned of increased vacancy and rising rents in that space to cover overhead or CAM. It's back to the landlord. And some future projections. I think we're looking at a 9% increase in existing home sales and 11% rise in new home sales for 2025. Indicating a slight rebound in the market activity. So there's going to be obviously affordability challenges. High home prices and mortgage rates continue to pose affordability issues, but I really don't feel like the rates are that bad. I think we were spoiled during COVID with a blip in the market where we saw 3%, which I hope to God we don't see that again, or something catastrophic as COVID, where the government is insane to shut everything down, where many renters are spending significant portion of their income on housing. So is there going to be enough money to put into a deal if you're renting at a nice Class B market? You're going to get real comfortable. You're not going to save money for that to buy that house, and you're going to get comfortable living and renting. So very interesting dynamic going into May of 2025, and very excited. But I'm excited from a investor perspective. I'm meeting a lot of new people. I'm getting a lot of emails and inquiries by older clients that I haven't spoke to in 5, 8, 10 years. Really interesting stuff. So a lot of people are coming off the sidelines. So let's get started with our moderators. I want to thank them again for their patience. Bob, good morning. Welcome back. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion, state of the economy and its impact on real estate investing.
Hey, good morning, Joe. So my name is Bob Chesek, president of Chespin Corporation, helping people set up LLCs. I'm not here to give legal advice today. The economy, first of all, thanks for having me back, Joe. I know I was MIA there for about a month, dealing with some personal health issues, but I'm on the mend now, so should be more visible in the coming weeks. But the economy, this economy has just been very, very bizarre. It not just for real estate investors, but anyone with an entrepreneurial spirit. All kinds of businesses are having bizarre struggles. This is the time of year when, just as a side note, when we have our renewals for Delaware LLCs, and we have never had as much pushback from people who are trying to get extensions on paying their franchise taxes and all that stuff that's due at the end of the month. Well, the state doesn't give extensions. You don't pay, you get fined, and you lose your registered agent. That's just how it works. So unfortunately, we've been seeing more pushback, and it's just because of the wackiness of the economy. What Joe said about people not moving a lot, definitely talked to people just in my personal life and even some clients that were thinking about moving and just decided that with the way things are, they feel more comfortable staying put right where they are, concerned about potentially upsetting their own financial balance. Others were very skeptical about moving to a new area where, maybe to take a new job or whatever the case may be, and getting nervous that what if it doesn't work out? Now I'm saddled with all this expense. I'm outside my comfort zone. People just seem to be really hunkering down again. I mean, not to the extent that we saw during what I call the end of the world in 2020, but definitely more people are a lot more, for lack of a better phrase, fiscally conservative across the board. And it's impacting not just real estate investments, but it's really impacting a lot of small businesses. And I can say that anything from somebody trying to buy and flip homes to the guy down the street running the bar. There's just a definite recoil, and a lot of it are leftover habits from 2020. And it's a very bizarre time. But the biggest challenge that I've been seeing with my clients, and not just real estate investors, of all clients, is frankly getting people to make the purchase and getting people to pay the bills for the purchases they made. I'll let Joe discuss whether or not credit card or loan defaults are at a high or low. That's his department. But the biggest thing I think that you're going to have to take a look at when you're getting into real estate investing right now, or with even if you've been in it for a while, be more careful and be more selective with what you're doing, the purchases you're making and the moves you're making. Is this the right time to jump into a market that you're not familiar with? Maybe not right now. Stick with the market you're more familiar with, where your resources are more concentrated. That seems to be the pattern that I'm seeing more and more with my clients. And also understand that a lot of people are taking a lot longer to make decisions, and they're much more price sensitive than they've ever been. Prices haven't come down lately. They've generally gone up, and there's a lot of also fear with the tariffs, but that's all whole other discussion I don't want to get into. But the bottom line being, the state of the economy is affecting real estate investment. It's also affecting small businesses and entrepreneurs across the board, as customers have become a bit more reserved, as I've seen it, at least in the markets which I am currently dealing with. Nothing was intended as legal advice. Joe, back to you.
Thank you, Bob. And I always appreciate your time on here. And, touching on real estate delinquencies as of May 2025, it reflects an ongoing challenge across various sectors, particularly commercial real estate, while residential mortgage delinquencies remain relatively stable. So, overall CMBS delinquency rate, meaning the commercial real estate space, stood at around 5.7, about 4 basis points increase from the previous month. This is as of May. So it's on the rise. Office sector is seeing a balancing act right now of delinquency. So it's still at a high, but vacancy rates and decreased property values are definitely going to be impacting office sector probably over the next year or so. Multifamily delinquencies for multifamily increased about 4%, up another 4% from the previous year. Uh, Definitely attributed to oversupply and changing demand dynamics in multifamily. In residential mortgage delinquencies, I'm seeing the 1 through 4 space increase at least 4%, up another 10 basis points from the previous year. I see delinquency rates for conventional loans remained near historical lows. That's because a lot of the people that have that 3% rate are not leaving anymore. Government-backed loans, delinquencies for FHA and VA rose more significantly, reaching about 11%, indicating a greater stress amongst those borrowing groups. Refinancing pressures, approximately about $1 trillion in commercial real estate debt is due in 2025, with sectors like office and hotel facing higher delinquency risks due to refinancing challenges and sector-specific stresses. Interest rate impact, is the Fed really impacting rate right now? They're independent. They're not part of the government. I think people don't realize the Federal Reserve is not a department of the government. They are hopefully an influencer to the rates, which I am not seeing a lot of that. And I'm seeing significant headwinds right now and misinterpretations by the market reflection to what the Fed is saying. And we're in the first 100 days of President Trump. We can't really get a gauge of what he's doing and his staff is doing and what that looks like for at least another to the end of this year. I mean, right now we're riding off the previous past 4 years. So we have to kind of wait and see how all these moves they're making very quickly and how that will impact the bottom numbers. I don't really care what the media has to say. I care about what the numbers have to say. So it'll be very interesting to see how that looks. Good morning, Brian. Welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to the discussion, state of the economy, and its impact on real estate investing.
Joe, thanks for having me. My name is Brian Guth. My wife and I own LG Homes Group up here in upstate New York, Rochester, New York. We both have full-time jobs. We have basically part-time real estate investors with its fix and flips, fix and holds, and Airbnbs. And I agree with the previous commentary and Bob, just kind of just a strange atmosphere right now. And I'm definitely seeing kind of a wait and hold, kind of wait and see approach, both from kind of my personal circle as well as kind of some of the market itself. From a real estate market, I'm definitely seeing a softening of the market here in upstate New York, where properties on the market a little bit longer, a couple price drops. But the big thing up here is the delayed negotiations, where basically you put in your highest and best offer and kind of go with you can have escalation clauses. And although our inventory is historically low, it was very rare that someone passed through delayed negotiations, meaning that basically the price, it was almost like a silent auction to get to the number the seller was expecting. And we're seeing more and more go past delayed negotiations. That's what I'm seeing, where the market's kind of softening. And for me personally, from an investor perspective, there is just the ambiguity of the market. I have a couple of properties under contract that I'm looking to fix. Still debatable whether it's going to be fix and flip or fix and hold. But I do kind of worry about, okay, what will the expenses be as far as when I need to rehab these properties? I built in enough buffer, but just kind of curious, will it be a 40,000 rehab, using my numbers from 2 months ago, or will it be a $46,000 rehab? If prices start to spike. So just kind of an interesting concept. I'm not changing what I'm doing. It just kind of, I guess, if I really kind of self-reflect, I'm also kind of taking a wait and see or not as aggressive approach, just to kind of be cautious to see how things kind of settle out. Um, I'm not as in tune kind of to the global economy, kind of things like that. I'm just kind of sharing my perspective of what I'm seeing here in upstate New York. And with that, I'll pass it back.
Hey, Brian, I got some questions for you because obviously, I'm a fan of that whole corridor up there, Rochester, Syracuse, even Binghamton, or even consider Albany and Buffalo and Ithaca all in that same corridor. Where are we seeing the biggest migration movement of jobs right now? Because everybody has a different opinion. Is it Syracuse? Is it Ithaca? Is it Buffalo? Where are we seeing migration numbers? Because Buffalo got ranked in the top 25 places, best places to live, which I found very interesting. And then I found that jobs were going into Syracuse and Ithaca. So what is it? Like where are we seeing the rental impact for the investor right now up there? Because Rochester's always been rock solid as a highly ranked cash flow play market. So what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, admittedly, I don't want to sound like an expert on this because I kind of just I see and hear what I see in my circles.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I've noticed or been aware of, I would call out Syracuse. I forget the company.
Macron.
Someone's what's that?
Macron.
Maybe that's what it is. Like they got a huge grant from the state, so obviously they're going to start developing. But obviously, if you're bringing in tens of thousands of jobs, there's going to be a housing need after the fact. So to kind of throw it out, I don't have much knowledge on this. I haven't heard of that. But Syracuse up here in this area, the Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo area. The Syracuse is definitely the up and comer from what I've observed and kind of what I read up on.
Yeah, it's an older stock of real estate there. I mean, the average house was built in 1954, so it's a very interesting how they're going to have to revitalize that market. It's an older market, older community. A lot of people stay there. But to what Brian was saying, yeah, the U.S. real estate market is showing signs of softening as of May 2025, and it's influenced by various economic factors: slowing price growth, increased seller concessions, rising inventory, longer time on market, affordability challenges. There's regional variations. The market softness is not uniform across the country. Suburban areas have seen significant price increases, where in contrast, urban centers have seen declines and dropping as much as 17%. Looking ahead, experts anticipate a continued moderation in home price growth. There's probably a forecast of about 2.6 increase in home values for 2025, which is much different than the previous, 4 or 5 years. The challenge is affordability and the lock-in effect, where homeowners with the low mortgage rates are reluctant to sell may continue to impact market dynamics. While the real estate market is softening, the conditions vary by region, and factors like mortgage rates and inventory levels will continue to influence trends throughout the year. Good morning, David. Welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion, state of the economy and its impact on real estate investing. Mr. Dave, going once. There you go.
Yes, good morning, everybody.
Hey, Dave, why don't we have a pretty picture of you, man? Why is it such a mystery?
You know what? I didn't even think about that. I will upload a picture.
I mean, you could just use a picture of me if you want to make yourself feel better. You know what I mean?
That'll probably be better, actually.
Yeah.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Dave Enjemy. For those of you that haven't met me or haven't heard me speak before, I handle a few things in the industry. I handle title insurance in all 50 states, property and casualty insurance also in all 50 states, and I additionally help Joe on his team with lending at Lendmark for investment properties. So some of the things that caught my attention that were spoken about this morning are what Joe was saying and a few things that Bob was saying. So let me kind of start by saying between Friday and tomorrow, I will take in, on the title side, 4 title orders. And out of those 4, 3 of them are for investment properties. So that's clearly been the active part of the market that I'm seeing, way more than owner-occupied properties. And I think the reason for that is because some of the things Joe and Bob were saying, that people are really holding on to their money in this economy. They are only spending, and I'm going to put myself in this category too, only spending on things that are income generating things. So, especially if they have really low rates on their primary residence, I don't see a lot of movement. And it's made for probably the least active spring market that I've seen in the 20 plus years I've been in the business. And everybody I talk to is kind of saying the same thing. So it's unfortunate. I do think, and this is an economic statement more than a political statement, but if you take it as political, so be it. I do think it stems from really the rough patch we went through from COVID on in the last 4 years. Some really unpopular policies economically have put people in a real bind. So here we are. With that being said, I did do a closing last week for somebody's primary residence, and they had a 6.5 rate for 30 years. And they were kind of, not complaining, but kind of asking my opinion on, if I thought that was a good rate or not. And everybody around the table was like, yeah, comparatively speaking, that's really good. But people are kind of spoiled from the 2020 rates that Joe mentioned. They're still expecting, the 4.5% rates. So they aren't bad. Rates are not bad right now at all. Over the history of rates for mortgages, they're actually very good. So it's just a reset. And, hopefully that adds a little bit to the conversation. I have to jump off a little early today, but I put my phone number in the chat. Anybody can reach out to me at any time for questions on any of the things I mentioned: lending, homeowners quotes, title, insurance fees, anything you need.
Hey, Dave, you got a quick minute? You've been at a lot of newer events that you're not accustomed to attending. Has the general consensus been renovating to hold or just finding turnkey comparatively to flipping in the markets that you've been marketing in, which is really South Jersey, Philadelphia, maybe Delaware a little bit? What has been the general consensus? Are you meeting a ton of flippers? Or are you meeting a ton of people that want to do BRRRR strategy or light renovation and turnkey? What has been your trend doing title, insurance, and private lending now this past week? What has the general consensus been?
Yeah, most definitely the flipping has decreased. Everybody I'm talking to, I pretty much asked that question. One of the first things I asked, oh, hey, you're an investor. What is your strategy? Do you buy and hold? Are you more of a flipper? And 9 times out of 10, people are not flipping right now. They are buying. Most of the properties do need some updates. So in a lot of cases, it's not turnkey, and people seem to be okay with that. Again, people seem okay with spending money on something that's going to be income generating. So if they have to, put $50,000, $75,000 in the renovations, they seem more okay with that. But they're not flipping for whatever their reasons are. They're definitely not flipping.
Dave, thank you very much. Look forward to another great week with you hitting the streets of real estate with investors. And I had a discussion with a group of investors yesterday in Rhode Island, and we ran scenarios, DSCR, as well as fixed to rent. And there was a bunch of real estate agents in there which were getting CE, continuing ed. I saw the light bulbs going off. They were looking at the opportunities. A lot of these real estate offices are pivoting right now. Suddenly they have a commercial division because home ownership is just low. I mean, all these boutique real estate offices are opening suddenly commercial divisions and are talking about having discussions on commercial outlook. Like, that scares me because a lot of these individuals just don't have the transactional experience to even dip their toe in the pond. I mean, none of them haven't even thought about taking a course at CCIM or anything like that, which always makes me a little nervous. I'm going to see a lot of mistakes made in that space, a lot of miscalculations. But that's where a lender like myself picks up opportunities in the bridge financing when they screw up. But I digress to. We ran over debt service numbers, and this one gentleman was great. He had a lot of experience. We ran the debt service numbers, and he was at around 1.6 on the DSCR when we did the equation. And I said, well, how are you calculating your depreciation on this property, and what's your game plan of ownership on this property? He goes, well, I'm 52. I'll probably own it at least till I'm retired. I said, well, then You know you have the 27-year depreciation. Why don't you take it as a 10-year and take all of it up front? Because by the time you're 62, 65 years old, does it really matter any more depreciation on that property? It's going to be all cash flow. And I said your debt service by the end of the year will be close to more 2% a month on average based on the tax deductions. And these are just suggestions. You need to sit down with your bookkeeper. You need to then relate that to your CPA to see what that impact. And a lot of people were like, wow, where the hell did that come from? Nobody really thought about that. You got to think the whole way through if you're holding these properties. Are you holding it for the next 30 years? Are you holding it for the next 10 years? The average investor does something with their property over the immediate 7 years. That's the average. I like to know that you are going to keep it for the next 30 years, but that's not the likelihood based on the industry trends don't show that. And then again, you have to think this through, whoever you're working with in your team of experts. But also, is flipping versus BRRRR strategy the thing in May 2025, right? Both flipping and BRRRR strategy remain very viable real estate investment approaches. However, each comes with its own set of advantages as of this month, right? Higher demand for move-in ready homes, right? House flipping. People don't want to barely want to hang a picture. They want to order everything from IKEA and Amazon, and hopefully it all shows up assembled. Potential quick profits, but are you really making profits if you're flipping within the first year? What is the government obtaining from you on capital gains? There's higher borrowing costs, right? For high, really on the construction side, not really. Rates for construction dropped. My construction numbers, I'm at 8.99 starting a construction. I could technically do a no point deal at 10.5. That's where we're at right now. It dropped a full point in construction numbers. The DSCR numbers did not come down. They leveled off. We're still between 6.875 and 7%. But right now, construction money is probably the cheapest I've ever seen in quite a while. Okay, so to borrow money, what's the plan? Are you flipping it or are you holding it? Then let's talk about what that interest rate should look like from an interest only perspective, because are you going to be refinancing it in 6 months, 3 months? Are you flipping it in 6 months? We need to know what the holding period is so we could justify the right potential and what kind of money you want to put down as a down payment, depending on your experience level on a rehab versus a flip, right? So there's definitely more tax advantages to consider with BRRRR strategy. And I'm not your tax accountant. I'm not your CPA. Please refer to a professional in your space. And then there's the long-term appreciation. Now, we know these appreciation numbers are not going to be as frothy as they were the previous 5 years, but the steady rental income, and I'm seeing Section 8 affordable housing becoming very much a forefront in every urban setting in the country. Okay. But I don't really think rates are bad. I think they're very good. If you're using a 7% average rate to analyze your deal on a DSCR, I don't think it's a bad rate to kind of justify. I think the lending standards are getting stricter for banks and credit unions and local banks because they got beat up pretty bad. But on the hedge fund space, the guidelines are what they are. Okay. If you're going to buy in a very blighted area with board ups, we're not going to just take a blind eye to that. We're going to look at the crime stats, right? We're going to do a data verifying you and your business partners to make sure you're legitimately good, integrous individuals. I've had some very interesting conversations in the past couple of weeks on individuals' background, thinking they deserve an LLC loan, and I'm like, listen, you can't be on the loan at all because of your background. And then some others, we got them clearance. So again, I have deeper discussions for people either to short-term or long-term money. But in the current market, house flipping may offer quicker returns, but come with higher risk and costs, especially due to elevated interest rates and renovation expenses on the back end for the home buyers. Conversely, the BRRRR strategy provides longer-term benefits through steady rental income and tax advantages, but it requires significant upfront capital and longer investment horizon. You're going to need to surround yourself with good maintenance individuals and good property management. Your choice between these strategies should align with your financial goals, risk tolerance, and investment timeline. Felix, good morning and welcome. Thank you for your patience. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, state of the economy and its impact on real estate investing.
Grand Rising, Joe. Grand Rising, everybody. Thank you for having me as always. Felix Buchanan Sr., the JLix Group, Buchanan Team Enterprises. I do credit repair, business funding, wholesaling, rehabbing, and a host of other real estate services. I believe that the markets in which that I operate in are very user friendly. User friendly, investor friendly. Um, Obviously, the very first thing that you need to know when you're doing investments, especially in any economy, is knowing your market. Know what market it is that you're investing in. Understanding, knowing your comps, knowing your numbers as far as your rehab. Make sure you evaluate your deal to a T. This is the time to just make sure that you get more, involved in uh, every aspect of the rehab, just to make sure that you're not losing money because of contractors charging high prices, using what's happening in the economy and administration as a way to get more money. Make sure that you know what your miscellaneouses are, especially with a market like this. Just make sure that you add more to miscellaneous because of the administration. You're not 100% sure whether the material is going to go up. I added that into my contracts, just like COVID, where because of what's going on with tariffs and such, prices may go up. So you let the investor clients that I know that I'm working with, that there's a possibility that the cost of material, when I gave you this estimate 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks to a month later, the numbers could rise. Know what your exit strategy is. If you're buying to flip, I still flip a bit in the markets that I'm in. However, we are looking more for buy and holds. Agreed with what everyone was saying earlier, that when you're doing the buying and flipping, make sure that you know what your strategy is as far as capital gains. Whether you're going to do a 1031 exchange, just know what you're going to do with that flip, just in the event that, because of the way that the market is, are the buyers going to end up buying? I do Another strategy that I have is with buy and hold is rent to own. That's a very good strategy when you're doing buy and hold. So traveling nurses, Airbnb, I'm not so big on Airbnb just because of the constant rotation of, if people have to come in and out, you have to have the people that are going to clean the properties on a consistent basis. Rooms for rent, multi-units. Multi-units give you a different level of protection, because if one tenant wasn't renting and you have a 4 unit, you're still able to produce income and make a return on investment. Voucher holders. I've dealt with voucher holders for years, different sectors, Section 8, Baltimore County Housing Choice Voucher, a company called BRHP. They're great. Even during COVID, all the clients that I had that had those tenants, they got paid. It's just a matter of how you screen those voucher holder tenants to know whether or not, they're going to be a good fit. I haven't had bad experiences with any voucher holder tenants. However, of course, I've heard a million different stories of it just not going the way that you want. Know the price of your materials, even if you're utilizing a contract, and if you're using contractors that are doing, labor and material included, make sure that you are being mindful of what the cost of that material is going to cost you and how it can and can't hurt you within your rehab. My last thing is that I do believe that this market is more rental friendly than it is for purchasing homes. So obviously the MLS isn't going to provide the best properties. I do a lot of wholesaling as well. So you have an option to also make money in different sectors if you connect with other wholesalers that will, you can market properties to other investors, and then you make an investment and make money that way. And that's my knowledge for the day. And back to you, Joe.
Thanks, Felix. As always, I've known Felix close to 20 years. It's always great to rekindle relationships and working with individuals such as Felix.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, it's funny that Felix brought up STRs, and I have about a half a dozen short-term rental loans in my pipeline currently, and they're actually panning out. And in Connecticut, when we had our mastermind on Thursday, there was a young lady there, not a young lady, but somebody, more seasoned investor. She owns short-term rentals in California, Connecticut, one other area, and she's like, Joe, I want to buy in areas where I would want to stay. even though Indianapolis, Indiana is a very hot STR market, I would never want to stay there. So like, why would I want to own there? So I think when it comes to STR and MTR, you go more with your gut instead of the numbers itself, because you want to kind of you want to be part of that experience. And I'm seeing a lot of opportunities out in the Lancaster area, central Pennsylvania, Hershey Market. The numbers are jiving, and and asset-based lenders are very friendly to STRs at this point, as long as it's not full rural designation, and that's when it gets a little wonky and it falls back to the local credit union or local bank. But the numbers are very good. I mean, we're coming in like 6.875 to 7% on loans, and they're debt servicing. But we do take a look at the market rent, just God forbid the experience doesn't pan out per se. And that's really always a concern I have, because I want to cover myself. But knowing your real estate market is, understanding your real estate market is so crucial, in the state of a market, because you need to understand whether buying, selling, or investing, or just keeping an eye on the trends. These factors are very important to consider when you're a real estate professional, and whatever level you're at, whether it's property management, buying or listing sales. You got to know local market trends, what the home price is, what the sales volume looks like, what's the DOM, the days on the market, what's the inventory levels, seller's market, buyer's market, neighborhood analysis, looking at school ratings, crime stats, amenities, walkability, future development plans. What are the economic indicators? Employment rates, local business growth, new construction can all impact real estate. And interest rates. To me, it's a perfect investor market for interest rates. Now, for home buying, it all depends on necessity and location. And how will that affect affordability? And then what is the rental market in your space? Rental yields, vacancy rates, tenant demand. These are all very important factors in investing. And then what is the CMA or the comps to determine fair value? Like we actually just booked two appraisers, one for South Jersey and one Philadelphia, understanding appraisals 101. I got to take it back to 101 because people are not even at 102. And I think people need to have a lunch once in a while with an appraiser. Have a cup of coffee, buy them a cup of coffee, learn what's going on in your market. If there's a real estate networking group that you're a part of and there's an appraiser there, you want to pick their brain. Take them out to lunch. Believe me, they'll for a free lunch, they'll tell you anything you want to hear. Very important to understand where the state of the economy is, because appraisers know where things are going. They're kind of on the inside track on foreclosures, share sales, all that. They know where all that is going because they're doing bank work, not just for lenders like myself, but they're doing workouts. They know it. The postman knows and the appraiser knows what's going on. I'm going to go back to Bob real quick. Bob, what's some additional thoughts to the state of the economy and its impact on real estate investing? Bob?
Well, thanks, Scott. One thing I wanted to circle back on before I give thoughts, I threw it in the comments, but when Brian was talking about Syracuse, made me think. In previous life, I used to be a civil engineer. I was a highway designer, bridge designer for various projects in the Northeast, and New York State they're now doing this in Syracuse, and they did this in the Bronx a few years ago. New York State is actually starting to dismantle urban interstates in certain areas. A few years ago, they dismantled Interstate 895 in the Bronx and turned it into Sheridan Boulevard. It used to be the Sheridan Expressway. Now in Syracuse, they're ripping down Interstate 81 through the middle of the city. The section from the southern end of the bypass, which is Interstate 481, to another Interstate 690, which runs right through the middle of downtown. They're going to tear it down, the viaduct, and replace it with an urban boulevard, which they say is going to reconnect the neighborhoods that were divided by the highway back in the 60s. Interstate 81 is going to be relocated onto what is now Interstate 481 to bypass Syracuse altogether. And that project's currently underway. So very interesting that like New York has definitely grasped onto it. Wilmington, Delaware had a similar idea to tear down I-95 a couple of years ago and reroute it to the bypass, but they ultimately opted to rebuild the viaduct there. But that's another way that some areas, the smaller metros, they're trying to reconnect their neighborhoods by undoing the urban freeway systems and urban highways and boulevards. Rochester also dismantled part of their what was called the inner loop and turned it back into a boulevard. So again, New York seems to be a hot spot for those kind of projects. I wouldn't be surprised to see others come up in the future, especially in New York. But as for getting back to the whole idea with the economy, the big thing that I think and listening to what everyone touched on, like you said there. Dave said he's definitely seeing more on the investor side than the owner-occupied side. I wound up owning my childhood home last year, and trust me, that's Joe and you and I have had offline discussions about how that's changed my perspective on a few things in life. That now I own a physical piece of property. And it made me rethink. It's like, okay, well, I have my own piece of land. I don't have to go out there and hunt for it, or, I still have my apartment in Delaware, but I could get rid of that at a moment's notice and have a place to go if I really want to. The only problem with that is it's in Scranton, but that's another story. But the idea being that I was like, I don't want to, sell this property and go look for something else anywhere, anytime soon. But just the major thing to watch for, especially with the investments, is if you're going to be looking for investment properties or where you're looking to, you still have to kind of consider where are the places where people want to move to, where are the places where economic activity are happening. We definitely saw so much happen in the past 5 years. Pennsylvania got an unusual boost in the 2020 census because a lot of people from the New York metro area moved to the Poconos, and that pushed up the 2020 census. But once New York reopened, a lot of those people moved back closer to or back into the city. So you have to watch the trends, watch the demographics for where you're going. If you're and I did find the most interesting that Joe mentioned about the multi-use, the live, work, play theory. Where they were building these like urban, I call them fake downtowns, urban town centers with, the shops on the bottom, the houses on top. And I always thought that was an interesting concept, but I always kind of wondered, why would you move into a place like that versus actually moving into a real downtown if that's what you were looking for? So that's going to be another space to watch, especially with the malls being converted to God knows what now. But this is a topic I think that could be revisited every few months, because simply put, we're going to see a lot of changes in the economy. We're seeing a lot of craziness in 2025. And depending how President Trump handles the economy and the tariffs and all that, we could be looking at some very interesting economic changes. So be ready to change at a moment's notice if you're in the market, but also be aware of the fact that you're just going to have a lot of people that are going to be holding back and conservative right now. Joe, back to you.
Thank you. And I do hope that some of this movement politically brings jobs back to the United States internally, domestically, and bringing back a platform of job opportunities for people in the country, and not having to migrate as much as they once had to be able to afford to live. And Felix brought up a really interesting dynamic, which on the appraisal side. We're now, and Brian was actually a client of this circumstance. I am allowed to pick the appraiser to be put on the panel that you might be more comfortable with. Now they're not going to do something illegal. But it puts you at a comfortable space, knowing that I'm sitting where I'm sitting, and your appraiser is from your immediate market. They understand your property, they understand the market itself, because I'm just underwriting the file based on the appraisal, because I'm an asset-based lender. So I'm focused extremely heavy on a good appraisal. And the appraisal will make or break an investor in this market right now, based on after repair value, as is value, current stabilized value, rental market, air DNA market, for STR, MTR. These are very important numbers that weigh heavy on the appraiser. I'm also seeing some disputes back and forth based on certain comps not being used, and and justifying why or where or when. You can't go 25 miles out to take a comp on a property. It's got to be within the market. It's got to be relevant to the asset itself. It's got to make sense. So I see the entrepreneurial spirit of the real estate investor being defined, at the state of the market, economy market here. And we're going to have this discussion probably after the summer just to see how things go, probably in September. It's blend of vision and resilience and risk tolerance and strategic thinking. Unlike passive investment approaches, real estate investors with an entrepreneurial mindset actively seek opportunities to create and grow wealth through property related ventures. The opportunity recognition, being creative and problem solving, calculating risk taking, networking and negotiation. I mean, I am a big fan of sponsoring networking events. I love those events that are somewhere between 25 and 100 people in a room. Why? I get to know everybody. I get to have follow up with everyone. I get to ask very specific questions to make you feel comfortable in a follow up discussion. There's execution and systems as a real estate investor, long term thinking and legacy. I also had a discussion yesterday at our presentation in Rhode Island as well as Connecticut. What have I done differently this year than any other year as a real estate professional investor? And I tell you, the biggest thing was, okay, I do a lot of networking. I meet a lot of people, but I support it now spending money, not bullshit money, real money on social media analytics, meaning media placement in Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter or X, Blue Sky, YouTube, TikTok. I'm trying to think where else other sites. Instagram. Like Instagram. I like Instagram. I'm close to 4,000 followers. I've increased that impact. I'm very heavy in the LinkedIn space. I'm very committed to providing educational blogs and information and insight. So to me, I think that's very important as a real estate professional. You need to stay in front of your audience. Okay, you need to spend money in the right way. Like, do you have all your contacts in one CRM? Like all of us are hopefully on LinkedIn, right? Do you have every name, email, and phone number to every person that you're connected with on LinkedIn? And if you're not, why? Why haven't you set up a calendar discussion with each 10 people a week on that? That's going to be the game changer in your state of the economy as a real estate professional or a real estate investor. So like I collected all my data from LinkedIn, and now I'm going to have people setting appointments for me to have follow-ups with all the people that I'm connected with on LinkedIn. Why not? They're connected to me for a reason. Their impressions show up on the articles that I post and the blogs I post and the polls I post. So why not follow up and see how they're doing and what's going on? How can we be of assistance to one another? The follow up and follow through is also an impact to the state of the economy. It's how you handle this economy as a professional, meaning you could either retract and hide in the corner, or you can come out like a savage. And I think I'd rather come out like a savage and be out there ringing the bell saying, hey, what's going on, than sitting back waiting for it. You can't sit back and wait for it right now. If you're not seeing the inbound traffic right now, you need to expand or change the lane a little bit or get yourself educated. Do a couple tips of the trade on video work and get yourself out in front of people. We will do a complimentary interview with you on a podcast if you need a one-on-one and get you some analytics video-wise. We've just done a couple of those just for the events itself, and they've been very successful. But again, I'm not in your, I might not be in your market. So, if you need help from afar, we're here to facilitate that here at the Creative Birth Strategies House and Podcast. I think it's very important. We separate ourselves from any other Clubhouse room here on Clubhouse because we're trying to make sure you walk away educated, you walk away insightful, and two, if we can help you grow in your business, we're your biggest fan. Brian, quick final thoughts on the discussion this morning, state of the economy and its impact on real estate investing.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I always like following Bob in these discussions. He brings up great points. Just kind of knowing, are there situations where the government has funding to put into neighborhood projects, things like that, and think about it. Okay, if there's a project that's been approved for, to improve an area, whether it's a developmental area or kind of highway reconstruction, road rerouting, keep in mind of those projects, and then think, okay, 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, how is this going to look? I've seen firsthand, you kind of scoop up some properties today where the value is 100 grand, and in 10 years it'll easily be at 400 grand because of the outside factors of government influence as far as kind of injecting funds in a certain area. So that was a great call out. I think that kind of ties into the economy, some of the government funding, and just in general how those items can impact the real estate investment landscape. So good heads up by Bob there.
Thanks, Brian. Felix, your final thoughts to the state of the economy and its impact on real estate investing.
My final thoughts would just be, as I mentioned before, make sure you know your numbers, know your market. I'd even take it a quick step further. Find a mentor or find people that are in that space that are doing it and doing it at a rate that it's something that you want to follow or something that you want to imitate, and see how you can get to either being one of their mentees and or being able to pick their brains.
Felix, my final thought to that is getting coached in real estate can significantly accelerate your success. Especially if you're serious about building a business and investing strategically. I get coached once a week, so I am an absolute fan of just mindset and personal development. Avoid costly mistakes, accountability, confidence, network expansion, and faster results. I am a big fan of that. And you really touched on something. I think that's another thing to consider in this type of economy. You need maybe somebody to look over the shoulder and say, hey, where can we make a shift here? Okay. So I want to thank our sponsors, of course, always. I want to thank Mr. Geraldo Perkins of Perkatech. I'd like to thank MB Capital Solutions, your unsecured business line of credit program, where I'm a referral partner. I'd like to thank Realty 411 with Linda Pelagas, national publication and national events throughout the country. I'd like to thank Lenmark Capital, where I'm senior loan analyst, providing insight strategy for asset-based lending for real estate investors throughout the country. I'd like to thank Elite Dealmakers, where I'm extending networking events in New Jersey and PA, and then TCS Property Management Services, where I'm a licensed real estate agent in New Jersey and PA, providing property management and maintenance services for real estate investors. And my quote this morning: write down things you want to improve. Write down things you won't tolerate from yourself. Write down things you never want to see yourself do again, and go forth. Have a great Sunday morning, 9 a.m. every Sunday morning here, Eastern Standard Time. Take care of yourself. Have a great week. If you have any questions, reach out to any one of the moderators that have provided insight or strategy. We're here to hopefully give back and provide and be part of your team of experts. Thank you, and I'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds.